Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're back for more specialist insights, welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. Before we begin, we want to say a thank you to our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this awesome event to life. We're sure you'll enjoy it. And if you're on the lookout for more resources, our Slack community is home to a bunch of contributions from thousands and thousands of fellow product marketers. So if you're not already a member, join the debate, but for now, enjoy the presentation.
In some ways, things are kind of the same.
People are dropping off.
In other ways,
The screen's too slow.
well,
Fluffy, seriously.
We still got a couple things just to polish this up.
the good news is we've learned we can do this.
Any questions?
can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, let's run through the sign-up flow. I really like how clean it is.
Turns out when we're hitting our goals, nobody cares if we're wearing pants. We just need the right tools. So our team stays a team. So no matter what comes next, we know we can work better, do better. This is going to work.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Daniil Karp. I'm the go-to-market product marketing lead at Asana, and really excited for the conversation that we have for you today around accelerating your time to market, lessons from over 500 product launches. Today I'm joined by Carlos Almonte, Executive Director of Global Marketing at Techstars. And what we're going to be talking to you about is what we think is the core responsibility of every great product marketing team, and that is executing successfully on the go-to-market strategy and bringing products, services, features, whatever your team is working on to market to your customers successfully. And specifically what we want to hone in on today is nailing the balance between getting the product market fit right and getting to market quickly, because we know that the velocity of markets, the ability to stay on top of trends and to stay ahead of competition is so important. But how do you do that while at the same time not sacrificing some of those best practices around how you bring products and services to market? So I think we'll find a ton of complexity there, but also a ton of fairly simple and foundational things that you all can walk away from this conversation with when you think about your go-to-market strategy and processes. And I'm particularly excited to have Carlos here today because he's got such an amazing and mixed background that I think is perfect for this conversation. On the one hand, Carlos has spent a lot of his career on project management, production, really thinking about process. And on the other hand, he's worked with so many entrepreneurs, so many technical teams, so many product teams and product marketing teams to bring products to market. That's a really great mix of experience. So before we jump into our conversation, I want to first turn over to Carlos, give you a second to introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Daniil. Excited to be here to talk about this. Carlos Almonte, Executive Director. So I've been at Techstars for a little over 15 months and spent most of my career either in consulting, technical consulting, or agency work. I was at a couple of large agencies for about 15 years, but in and out of technology and creativity, creative shops as well. But always on the forefront of innovation. But I love process. I'm a process guy. And so loved the idea of talking about this topic. It's a great topic. So excited to be here.
Awesome. So I'd love to jump in and really take advantage of that breadth of experience that you have. I know personally, and I know a lot of folks who are listening are just so focused on their product category, their company. And I think what we'd love to hear from you to start things off is your perspective on what general themes and trends have you seen impact product marketing teams and go-to-market teams overall across industries, across product types over the last couple of years? And how has that impacted how they need to go to market to be successful?
You know what? I don't know if what I'm about to say is fair for across every every type of team out there. It's just I'm just really just going to answer this based on what I've been seeing. I spent a fair bit of my career with teams that did nice in-depth research, really understanding their core audience, almost to overkill, right? Almost doing too much research sometimes, and having clients or partners or stakeholders that kind of scratch their heads. It's like, why do we have to do so much work on the insights to develop this persona or this archetype? What I've been finding is like that's sort of gone by the wayside a little bit with some of these teams, and it's a head scratcher for me, because maybe that's just me being old school. Like, do you know this audience well enough to do what you're about to do? And so one of the that's one example of, I think, the general theme that I've been seeing is just not quite enough rigor up front in preparing for the journey ahead of getting a product ready for market and developing that, whether it's a new product or it's a new, a next subsequent version. There's a bit of hastiness going on is I guess the very crude way of saying it. And so better planning is what I would love to see more of. And I'm not sure, things are moving fast, right? The markets are shifting so drastically, and I think people are feeling nervous. They want to get to market even faster, but maybe sacrificing some of the fundamentals that they really shouldn't sacrifice too much of.
Got it. And how have you seen teams try to, or how have you counseled teams to try to create a little bit more of a balance, knowing that they need to move fast, but still investing in that upfront foundational work you're talking about?
Yeah, a great question. There's no one perfect answer. I think when I talk to teams that feel like are moving a little too hastily, not putting enough work in the foundational stuff, I'll try to spend a little time with them and just say that, look, you don't have to spend weeks or months doing this, but at least have a baseline of your insight, of your persona, of the business goals. Like, let's build a brief. It doesn't have to be 20 pages long. It could be half a page. Let's just have something so that you're not just going into this blindly, right? And I think what happens there is depending on the maturity of the team or how long a team has been doing a certain thing, they might feel like they already have all the answers. And so that's a dangerous place to be sometimes, because if you feel like you already have all the answers, then you might be setting yourself up for a surprise later on. Product doesn't sell as well, or you hit a roadblock with a stakeholder that's questioning your decisions if you don't have a proper foundational setup. So I like to use briefs, right? Whether it's an input brief or a project charter, at least some sort of documentation for people to rally around. But I've seen it on the flip side as well, where there's a little bit of overbaking, and that can be a bit of a blocker as well. It's like, so you got to find a balance with documenting something, but don't go at it without documenting something.
Yeah, we definitely kind of, I think, or my experience has been on the launch and the go-to-market side, that you often live or die by the brief, and getting it right, answering all of those tough questions up front around target audience, the business pain, the business metrics and goals, and what success will look like at the end becomes so important. Can you speak, one of the other things that I think is crucial is not just getting all of that to paper, but getting the right, I think, executive sponsors to agree on that brief and to align on that brief in the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen teams do this successfully?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the culture of your company, but I think one thing that's pretty universal is who's going to champion and advocate for the work that you're doing. And who's going to do that and also have the right influence within your organization to stand behind what you're doing so that you can get through it successfully and launch something great. When it comes to roles and responsibilities, it's always good to have somebody, at least if you're going to use a RACI, somebody that from a consult standpoint or an accountability standpoint, make sure that the folks that are accountable for your work stream, your product launch, is invested, right? Their time is invested in it, their attention is invested in it, and their passion to make sure that it goes well. Because when all else fails, you go back to that advocacy, right? If they're standing behind your brief and what you've written down and you've shared it, then you should be in good shape. So I'd say the general takeaway is just make sure you have somebody on your side, and it's not just necessarily your boss, or it's not necessarily the head of that product line. It could be somebody next in command, but just have somebody that will be there to help shepherd it through.
Yeah. In my experience, it's been so important to get, I think all the PMMs listening in know that we are charged with getting big things done, but we are never getting them done alone. We are so reliant on so many cross-functional teams that we work with. And what we found has really worked for us, or I found, is getting those people together, a few representatives from each of those stakeholder groups to align on that brief, so that when you're presenting that brief to a larger audience and you have all of those leads or key stakeholders on that call, when questions invariably come up or someone raises a concern, which is good, it means people are leaning in, it means people are buying into the plan, the folks who are leading the charge on the launch are all aligned on how to answer that, so that you don't have that, you get through, you iron out all of those things before you get even into the kickoff process. Yeah,
so that brings up a great, a process that's not necessarily popular that I use that I find very effective is, and I think what's resonating in my head is discipline leads, right? So if you think about like a team that has a multidiscipline team, or you've got different players that are all part of that product launch, you definitely want buy-in from the various groups, right? In that brief, not just the main stakeholder that's going to champion this thing. That's definitely crucial, because you want someone that's at the helm, not driving it, but at least your captain that's going to stand behind you, making sure you're in the right direction. But it's all those main players that are helping that ship move forward, right? Meaning the discipline leads, or whether they're department leads or discipline leads, that they're all part of that briefing process. Get them all on board, right? If there's debate, that's fine. Get it right. Get it to a common denominator that you can all stand behind. But the thing that's not popular is having a meeting before the actual kickoff, right? So whenever people say, oh, we're having a meeting for the meeting, it's like, yes, actually in this case, this one case, yes, have that meeting before the meeting. And what I like to do is bring those discipline leads together. And especially if the extended team is large, right? If you have like a 15, 20 person extended team, 30 person extended team, you have a whole mixture of senior level folks, mid-level folks, junior folks, all joining this call. The first thing they're going to ask is, what do you want me to do, right? Even if you present this beautiful vision, they'll listen to it, they'll read it, but the first thing on their mind is like, well, what's my assignment, right? So that pre-brief is yes, make sure that you are all aligned on the strategy. You should already have that figured out. But what are we telling folks in that room the day we kick off, right? Are we going to be very clear? Do we have it like clearly laid out who's doing what, how we're doing it, what's the mid-level plan, what's the detailed plan over the next 2 months, what are we driving towards? Like, your story needs to be ironclad, right? And that's the ideal state. I've probably been, out of hundreds of projects, I've probably been maybe part of like a few dozen that have been that well put together. It's usually not that well put together. It's especially if you have an existing process, you're putting together the core stuff, and then ideally you have that alignment and that pre meeting before you get into it, because it'll make all the difference in the long run.
One thing that kind of strikes me as you're talking about all these constituent parts about what makes up a good brief, what makes up, good planning to get there, and all the details that you need about who's going to be responsible for what and what goals are we trying to hit. What struck me is thinking about a recent presentation that our head of product and head of product marketing did together, where they basically said the goal of all of this work is actually creating a shared vision, so that when the team gets together, they all understand that they might have separate roles and different parts to play, but they all understand what the group is trying to accomplish together and their part in it. And I think what strikes me as vital in that is whenever you see a high functioning team or a highly productive team, it's usually a culture thing, right? It's usually that they all gel well together. There isn't a lot of fighting over who's responsible for what, or jockeying for position, or even politics. And it's because all of these little things got figured out, which build to this shared vision of what we're trying to accomplish with this launch. Why is it important? What will happen if it succeeds? What will happen if we fail? And I think some people might say, oh, Carlos, Daniil, you're talking about process and putting together plans to be successful go-to-market. That's boring. We want to talk about strategy. But if you want to execute your strategy effectively, you need to get the process right, to get the culture right.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, you call that a great aspect of the brief is the vision. That needs to be front and center, right? Maybe that's the second thing that you write in the brief. The first is the context, right? What's the background? Why are we even here, right? And then what are we trying to do? It's not even the tactical assignment. It's like, talk to me like we're having a drink together. Like if you're going to write it on the back of a napkin and you had 30 seconds to tell me what you're trying to do, that's the vision. Where are we going, right? Show me where we're going so that at least we can work out all the details along the way. So yeah, that's crucial. Of course you need that, right? And there's probably work to get to that point. But yeah, with shared vision, it all comes together. But yes, you need the process to enable that as well.
So let's dig into, I think we've been talking a little bit at a high level. I want to dig into the process a little bit more. And there's kind of two big topics that I want to tackle with you. One is approvals and getting that right. I think as a team gets bigger, as a company gets more complex, that can become a hairy topic. And the other is work back plans. And folks on the line, not everyone might be very familiar with them, so we'll go through them in a little more detail. But let's start with approvals and how when you parachute or jump into a team that you're trying to help get a complex project off the ground, and there'll have to be multiple layers of approvals. How do you counsel them on setting up the right way to think about approvals, the right way to create transparency, to make sure that they're going through their approvals in the right way, but they're also not bogged down and constantly revisiting decisions that have already been made?
Yeah, I think the basic premise that I try to instill is fewer people, right? And that's hard sometimes, especially you have this sort of approval by committee cultures that are more common than not these days. Like when I was starting my career, there was very little of that. It was like there was one person and that they made all the decisions. But nowadays it's very much by consensus. A lot of times you got to find the decision maker, and along the way, even if it's not the main person, it's the person for those steps, right? Someone's got to own it, right? It can't be 10 people. I mean, at least try to bring it down to 2, right? Or 3. 3 is probably the most I'll go, because it's like you're already turning into a blocker at that point. So establish some milestones, make sure that there are owners along the way. And if you get blocked, there's got to be somebody else that can help influence that process through.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times earlier in my career, probably not as far back as I would like, but I've taken on projects, taken on big initiatives, and had not done the work of figuring out upfront who is the final approver, who is the reviewer, who needs to have insight into what's happening. And I think to your point, even to the folks who are listening who are trying to do this work, you're going to encounter a little pushback. People will say, oh, we want X, Y, and Z to have input, and then this person, and you might ask, well, who's the final approver? And they'll say, oh, we'll figure that out when we get there. Like everyone will.
Right.
And I've learned through experience that you need to push back on that very hard. And I've gotten to the point where like I refuse to start a project until we've gotten that stuff figured out, because there have been so many times where you've gotten approval, you think you're on the, you think you're about to finish a project or launch it, and suddenly someone says, oh, well, have we had X look at it? Or, I just had lunch with Y, and they have a lot of opinions about how this should be done. And what I've found has really worked for me is if you've defined that process, you can actually then begin to, again, push back, and you can say, hey, for the next project, if you want to have this person or this department to have approval or incentive, we can do that. For this current project, we've already locked in that decision. We can review the process for the next launch, but for this launch, we're moving forward because we've got to hit our deadlines. We've made commitments and a lot of locations. And so that's been very helpful when people have tried to reopen conversations or review things that have been approved on. If you have a document that has been agreed upon and seen by other people, you at least, you won't always win. You might still have to, if the CEO sees it, she might want, to have her input there, and you're not going to stop that. But it does give you the opportunity to at least say, hey, well, we agreed on this process, and can we keep it going this way in this project, and we can revisit it for the next one.
Right. No, totally. And that's where the prioritization comes into play. And whether you're using, high, medium, low, or a Moscow, must, should, could, would, whatever it might be, at least you have some sort of rubric to say, all right, whatever that top one is, we typically define it as, if this doesn't happen, even if it's not new, then the definition is this thing will be considered a failure if it doesn't happen, right? Because you're going to find a lot of those asks all of a sudden miss the list, if you define it that way. So. Yeah.
One last thing I'll say that's really been helpful for me is understanding that, and this is really, you're kind of looking for the unicorn decision maker or approver. You want someone who's senior enough in your organization that they can really move things along. They have enough influence internally so that when they approve something, it really is approved. But you also don't want someone who's so senior that they're so removed from
they don't know
work
the context.
that when you go to them with a difficult trade-off, they might push back to the committee and say, well, why doesn't the group decide? And that's because they don't have enough context to make a decision. So it's really
they're going to give it
tough.
right back down. They're going to give it right back down to the next person and be like, sorry, I'm not in it enough. Give it back to that person, right?
So it's really important to find that sweet spot. You're not always going to succeed, but it at least upfront thinking about who's that person who has enough institutional influence and is close enough in the process of the work and in the day-to-day of the work to help make these difficult trade-offs when inevitably they come up.
Or you got to do it yourself. Or you just have to make the call and live with it. And if you're called out on it later on, be like, I made the call. And I know that's not easy for everyone, but it's you got to make it. You got to make a decision.
You bring up a great point. No, I think sometimes the trick I've started using is you suggest what the call should be, and you bring it to the person who needs to make the final decision. You say, here's the situation, here are the trade-offs, here are the options. I think option B is the right way to go, and here's why. And in that way, hopefully you can give them enough context through that exercise to make that decision.
Right.
So the last topic I want to hit on is actually, some might say is the most boring, but now is my favorite topic of all, and that's work back plans. And before I started working at Asana, I never thought about creating, I ran huge webinar programs in my past life and thousands of digital events over the course of a year, and never created a work back plan. And now when I look back on that, I'm like, I could have made my life so much easier. I could have templatized so much of this work. I could have been so much more successful and impactful. I'd love to get your, as someone who has so much experience launching products and also in production and process planning, how do you think about work back plans? What are key things to include in them? And maybe just to start, like, what are they, and why should everyone on this listening in think about having one for their launch?
I always start with just the basics. Just make sure you have destination, where you're trying to get to, what's the launch date, and if you don't have one, make one up. It'll end up changing anyway. And then have your milestones, dependencies. You know, how many different groups are tied into this. Think about legal, right? Legal approvals. Just drop it all in there and start from where you want to go, and just start plotting in the steps all the way back to your kickoff or pre-kickoff, or just trying to even create the brief. It'll expose a lot, right? And so you want to just lay those all out so that you can start to put together an actual plan. I think people get caught up in that, and they're just like, I don't know. It's like, of course you don't know. You're just starting, right? But get the basics in. And if you're not sure, put an end date, put a start date, and then start to drop at least one review in there. And then, one milestone, approval of the entire project, whatever, just something. And then it'll come more naturally than you'd be surprised how naturally it comes.
Yep. And I've always found that, I'll do the first pass. I'll put in everything that I think could possibly be needed to be included. And then I'll go to my partners and I'll say, what have I missed in this work back plan? What are some of the things that might be blockers or risks for you? And then I think, to your point, we shouldn't think of go-to-market launches as singular. We often do that. They happen all the time.
Yeah.
And when you're creating your first work back plan, it doesn't have to be perfect. And the whole point is you're going to stress test it with a launch. And then the idea is that you create a template that you can spin up every time you do a go-to-market launch, so that you're never the only time you're starting from scratch should really be the first time you create a work back plan. Every time after that, you should have some kind of templatized plan that you can put in. I think,
I have one on my stickies. It literally says kickoff, review, launch. And that's my template. And they're like, that's not a project plan. I was like, yeah, it's my starting point every single time. I know those 5 things are going to happen every time.
Yeah. And what I love about that is, it's, as someone who manages a lot of launches every year, it allows me to ask every single time, because launches are different and what you have to do to be successful in them does change. When I have that template, I can start saying, what's going to be different about this launch? Exactly. What is going to be the risk? What will create a failure with this particular launch? Where are my cross-functional dependencies here? Oh, it's global. I need to talk to my translation team. How long will their work take? And I think the really important part that I've started spending more and more time on as I've iterated on work back plans is getting the resource allocation and the timing right. I started off with some good counseling from my manager, baking in requests for too many resources, too much time, over-promising, over-delivering and under-promising. And then as you get better, as you run your launches more and more, you can understand, okay, this actually takes, 4 days instead of 2 weeks. And this thing that I thought was going to take 24 hours actually ended up taking 2 weeks. And you start understanding where there are institutional blockers, where things can get better. And you can start thinking about, how do I improve this? And where do we need more resources? One place particular we found is we needed a lot more help in translation and globalization, globalizing some of our launches. And that was something that we were only able to really understand and point out when we created a work back plan, when we ran a few launches. Awesome. Well, Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing all your knowledge. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing everyone again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. We've yet another exciting presentation coming up, but before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to thank every one of our sponsors and partners, because without them, we wouldn't be able to bring this event to you. Don't forget, each speaker is going to be answering your questions, offering tailored support after their presentation. So stick around, leave your question, and get advice from a true expert in the field, tailored to you. It's that simple. Enjoy the presentation.
60% of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. Asana gives you that time back. Assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company, so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Hi, my name is Zach, and welcome to my chat on monetization, positioning, and how you can drive revenue for your product. So I'm going to take you through a practical case of not only why, but how product marketing can drive pricing and thus revenue for your product or for your company. So once again, my name is Zach Fox. I'm the Senior Director of Product and Customer Marketing at a company called RD Station. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Prior to here, I spent quite a few years as a management consultant at Bain and a few years in marketing at LinkedIn. So I'm sure that the vast majority of you have never heard of RD Station before, but RD Station is the #1 marketing automation and sales CRM for SMBs in Latin America. So think very much along the lines of a HubSpot or an ActiveCampaign focused on Latin America and emerging markets. We're about 25,000 customers, 700 employees. We have some great investors. We are based in Brazil, where I currently live, though I am from California. And we have this really great aspect about us, really that started a couple of years when I was here, which is nobody knows what product marketing is. So now that's actually changed. But I think it's really important for us to remember, when I started at RD Station, people really didn't know what product marketing was fully and what we could do. And I think that even though in many places that is not totally the case, pricing is one of those areas in monetization where no one really knows what product marketing's role is or could be. And we always have to be teaching people what do we do and what can we do. And I think that's true for all of us, right? So I want to give you a little bit of context about the product that we're talking about. So we have two products, a marketing automation software and a sales CRM. We're going to be talking about our sales CRM today. And this is a case that, we went through this year, in fact. And so the background is that we have a very simple sales CRM for first-time CRM users, basically managers of sales teams. It's about a 2-year-old product. We charge about 42 reais per user per month. So it's about $6. So don't think too much about that. $7 actually. But just to give you an idea of numbers, right? So we're at the lower end of the market, slightly trailing some of the market, but we're growing really fast. And the situation that came to us is, we are in the process of developing this new feature called multiple funnels. And so multiple funnels allows a sales manager to create different sales processes for different reasons. So that could be selling more than one product, or it could be 2 different processes, one for inbound and one for outbound sales, or something like that. This feature is, in fact, the #1 feature for loss reasons and churn reasons related to product. And so we know that this is an important feature. Most, but not all of our competitors have this feature, and it's about 60% into development. And so I'll give you this background as we go through this case, right? And so this is the case. And then one day the group product manager, everyone's aware of this in the team. We know that we're working on it. And the group product manager comes to the PMM lead on my team and says, hey, we're about 60% of the way, through developing this product. And I have this kind of plan of how we're going to beta test it and then do this. And I really want to start working on the positioning and launch planning with you. And so I'm sure many of you have had this situation. This happens every day for a product marketing manager, right? Um, and oftentimes we're actually excited that they came to us, this far in advance to help plan, which is fantastic. But at the same time, we said, wait a second, is this just about launching? Like, this is a really important feature. Is it more than just launching it? Or we have to kind of better understand, is there an opportunity for pricing here, or what's going on? So the first thing we said to the group product manager was like, this is fantastic, but stop. Let's stop right there, and let's think about this for a little bit and understand, what is this opportunity in front of us? Is it just another feature to launch, or is it more than that? And so where we wanted to start that conversation was, let's take a step back and let's think about our positioning. And this is really important because positioning gives us context, right? It gives us context about where a product fits in the market, where it's going, etc. So we scheduled a meeting where we had myself, the product marketing lead on my team for this product, the business unit manager for this product, the group product manager, and our ops lead for this product as well. And we said, let's talk about positioning. And so where did we start? So we started by creating this chart where we talk about price and completeness. And we're going to plot our different competitors in this chart. And we're going to say, where are we now and where do we want to be? And how does this decision in front of us today about this new feature and potentially our price impact that? So, we have a bunch of stuff on here, but basically understanding the market, we have these free CRMs that are usually, linked to marketing products or otherwise, like the free HubSpot CRM. Some of you might know about it. We have this low end, which is exactly where we are, the RD Station CRM Basic. We also have a free plan, but our core plan is this basic plan here that's in the low end with this other competitor. We have like this bigger chunk, which is what we're calling a solid standard. And they actually charge about 50% more than we do for the product. And, that's pretty important. A lot of our competitors are there. And then we have this higher end here that's about 100. And then up there, we have Salesforce just for you guys to follow along, but it's really kind of out of our scope here. And so we had this discussion and we said, where is this where we want to be? Like, do we want to be low end? And really quickly, we all got to the answer like, no, we are in the low end because this is a new product and we haven't had time to develop the features we need to be here or somewhere further up this line, right? We also feel pressure from these free guys coming into our piece of, this low end here, that some people might just opt for a free option and not want to pay at all if they're not going to have something that's better, for example. And so really what we realized is that this plan, this RD Station CRM basic plan, we really want to be here. And in the future, if we have another plan, which we're looking at, a pro plan, for example, like maybe that's going to be more in the higher end. But really what we want to do is move our product from this low end to the solid standard. And that's has a price increase. But also when we looked at, well, what are the key differences between the low end and the solid standard in terms of offer? And it really comes down to two features. And surprise, surprise, one of those features is multiple funnels. And so we said, okay, well, that gives us some ideas that maybe we want to look at pricing, right? And so it's really easy to look at that and say, oh, well, let's just jump to conclusions and say like, well, let's just raise the price like halfway between those two. It's kind of fine, but we don't really know, like, what if no one's willing to pay for this feature, but everybody's willing to pay for that other feature that is blocking us? And sometimes it's just really important for us to do the work, organize, structure, and make the right call. So when we think about that, there's really three key steps to think about here, right? And just all along, make sure that you're aligning this with the product team. The product team, there's going to be an impact on them and potentially on the roadmap, or you guys are going to have to work together on this. And so really make sure that you're aligning. But these three steps to think about are: one, what are your hypotheses? Two, what is the research that you're going to do? And three, how does this impact the roadmap? And these can oftentimes be done in parallel. Generally, hypothesis research maybe comes first and second, and then the roadmap is in parallel to both. But it's really important to kind of separate into those three steps, right? So let's start with hypothesis. When we think about this feature, this funnels feature, it's not just a feature, they're going to use it or not use it. Actually, there's a question around, well, how many funnels are people going to use? And are they willing to like pay more for more funnels and stuff like this? And it's really easy to say, oh, well, I think that, people are going to use like 3, 4, 5 funnels and they're willing to pay for that. But really, like, why 3, why 5, why 6? Like, what do we really know here? And so one of the approaches that I like to take is what I learned in consulting, which we call like, what do you need to believe? So this is a way to lay out your options and say, what do you need to believe for this option to be the best option? And so we did exactly that. We said, what are our choices? So let's pick a choice, right? The first choice we could say is, oh, well, we are going to put unlimited funnels. So our customer can create unlimited number of funnels. I'm going to put this in the basic plan, and we're going to raise the prices for everyone in that plan. So like, what do we need to believe to be true for this answer to make sense? Right? And so really what we need to believe is if we're going to put it in the plan and raise prices for everyone, we need to believe that almost everyone is going to benefit from this, and that almost everyone is going to want to pay more for it, because if not, we're going to alienate users, right? And maybe they're not going to want to pay and they're going to turn to that other guy in the low end or one of the freer ones. Right? So another option that we thought about was you could keep one funnel in the basic plan. And since we don't have a higher up plan, we would just charge an add-on for more funnels or unlimited funnels or whatever form we want to do that. And aside from the fact that making an add-on has product implications, right? We also need to know a few things. We need to know, generally, when you think about an add-on, it's when not all, but some people would benefit from it, but those people are definitely willing to pay more. And so you can differentiate pricing for those people specifically that want this feature versus everyone. But in this form, also, we want to know, well, if the people that want 2 funnels and the people that want 20 funnels are willing to pay different prices, then if we just set one price for all of them, then perhaps we're leaving money on the table. So we actually need to know here that the willingness to pay is actually similar for different numbers of funnels. And so we start laying these out, and we have a couple more options here, but we basically had 4 options. And this is great for people that aren't used to pricing. Say, forget all the fancy research. Let's just start with like, what are our options and what do we need to know to get there? So what we need to go to get there actually helps us go right into the research, because now we know what questions we need to ask to figure out what we need to know, right? And so we love Van Westendorp, but it doesn't have to be hard, right? And I think one of the things that I see a lot of people make mistakes here is that you actually have all of this other information. As a product marketer, you're very curious, right? You want to know, how are they going to use this feature? I want to know all the depths of like, well, what are the different use cases, and do different industries use it differently, and how is that going to work? And you might want to ask 26 questions to get there, but I'm going to really tell you, don't do it. If you want to learn all that, just go talk to your customers in a separate conversation. But this research is really about understanding the basics of how they're going to use it, of if different types of customers are going to use it differently, or how many funnels they want and how much they're willing to pay. You do not want to get away from how much they're willing to pay. And so we created a survey. It had about 10 questions. We actually separated it in 2, one for customers and one for the market, which we just use leads in our database to estimate, quick and dirty, right? And we asked a few basics around, about the company and the respondent, like, are they decision maker? Are they the user? Which segment are they in? Are they in our ICP or not? Well, the data that gets us there. And then the 3 basic questions, right? How many funnels do you need? What are you going to use them for? And how much are you willing to pay? And so 10 questions, keep it simple, keep the focus. At the end of the day, what matters most is this. And so you don't want to tire them out too much with this. So what did we learn? Right? We actually learned some really cool stuff, which was different than what we expected. And that's why you should do the research. 1, we learned 90% of customers and the market want this feature. So it makes sense. Most of our competitors have it, but 90% is really high. Like, we really didn't expect it to be that high. So I'm really glad that we did that research, right? The second piece is that we learned that customers are willing to pay more, and specifically the decision makers are willing to pay more than the users. And so that was really important for us to be able to separate users and decision makers, because that helped us get a better gauge. And so below you'll see the graph. I'm not going to go into the Van Westendorp here. I think you guys can read, Profit Well has a great ebook on that. But through this analysis, we found that, today we're charging 42, but really we could be charging 49 or 50 based on this research with our customers. And that's awesome. Then we learned that the market's willing to pay even more. And so the market really is comparing us to those, solid standards who are charging about 60. So then that makes us feel more comfortable, but it also creates a situation where we need to think about, our customers are different, right? And the last thing that we learned is that, in fact, willingness to pay does not vary by the number of funnels desired. And so 2, 10, 20, the willingness to pay was almost exactly the same. And in fact, the willingness to pay was almost exactly the same by type of company as well. So it's really interesting. So here we learned that the ability to personalize your funnels is what people want to pay for. They don't really want to pay for the number of funnels that you can create. And so this actually gave us some insight into our positioning as well as our pricing, right? And so there's this piece really quickly on, the roadmap. It's really important to think about the roadmap because, for example, here, this research was happening in parallel to the roadmap being developed. And one of the questions that came up was, how should we be preparing to beta test and launch? And so the original plan by the product team was actually to break this feature into 2 steps. And so partial in step A, and then the rest in step B. And then we would test it and then launch it the step A because we wanted to get value as quick as possibly to the customer. And some customers were going to see value just from step A, even without step B. But the problem is that caused a lot of confusion. So one is, where would we be communicating full value, right? Everyone knows price is dependent on how you communicate value. So are we going to communicate that value right after B, or are we going to do it later? Are we going to alienate people that think step A isn't enough for them, and now they think this feature isn't good, and so they're not going to use it when we get to step B? But also, like, if we were potentially going to have an add-on here, what happens if we have customers who start using step A and those customers aren't actually willing to pay more? And so by the time we get to the point of wanting to charge them more, they either have to get rid of something that they've been using for the past X months, or they have to pay, and both of those options might be bad. So we really need to think about how this relates to the pricing. So what do we decide? And what do we learn, right? We decided that we're going to launch everything at once. And so we're going to change that process, right? Because what we learned is that we don't need the beta to teach us whether or not people want this feature. People want this feature. And so in fact, the beta becomes a way for us to make sure it works and get feedback. And so we decided to beta test the full feature with just a few customers to make sure that worked. And particularly customers that responded that they were willing to pay, right? So we didn't have this problem. And we decided to launch it all at once. We decided to raise our prices from 42 to 49 per user per month. It may not seem like a lot, but it's 17%. And when we think about that, I asked actually just recently the product marketing lead on my team, and I said, she also actually runs demand gen, as this is a pretty new product. So we have a small team doing product marketing and demand gen. And I said, how much work would you have to do to increase NMRR by 17%, the same 17% you did with this pricing project? And she said 3 to 4 times as much work. And so that's really cool to teach people as well, is, right, sometimes pricing monetization is actually a quicker way to growth than other options, right? And so what we decided to do was raise prices first for the market right at launch. Before we raised prices for customers, this was going to give us an opportunity to get feedback and hear if people didn't like it, if there was a problem. It was also going to be on our website and inside our product pricing page inside our product. And so customers were going to be able to see that new customers were paying more, and it would give them an opportunity to give us feedback if they said, hey, like, I saw this, am I going to have to pay more? And we're going to see if people were going to complain about it, right? Even though it was very clear that they weren't paying more yet. So that was kind of a way to get a window into what could happen in case we messed up, right? We also wanted to show customers value before increasing prices. We thought that was really important, especially tied to the next point, which is that when we raised prices in Q1, this was in Q4 that we raised prices for the market. Q1, which is next year, we're going to raise prices for everyone. And this was really important because in Brazil, inflation is relatively high. And so it's normal to raise prices every year. But in fact, I should argue that almost everyone should be raising prices every year. And so customers come to expect that. And so we could align this to that. And then when we get there, we will have already shown them value in giving them this feature. And so then they'd be more willing to understand that price increase when we bring it there. And so right now we're a couple weeks after launching this new feature. And what did this tell us, right? What were the results that we got from this? One, we increased sales conversion, right? Because we had all of those lost sales because people said, oh, well, you don't have multiple funnels, I'm not going to buy your product. And so now we were able to increase conversion. And even cooler than that was we didn't have any impact due to price. In fact, nobody has even questioned the price any more than they would otherwise. Discounting has remained completely stable, and the number of deals lost for price being too expensive has remained stable as well. And so the market was really ready to absorb that price increase. So that was basically our project. And so I wanted to take a minute here really quick and go through a recap of some of our key learnings and some of the things that you guys should think about when you do this on your own. One, positioning always comes first. That chart has actually become a chart that we use for both of our products, and we update it all the time. And it's a really good way for us to say, where are we and where are we going, and get everyone on the same page in a visual way, right? The second piece is stay aligned with product and provoke them, even if it impacts the roadmap. That's your job. I mean, you're going to give them inputs into the features that they should be developing at times, but sometimes monetization is going to impact how they should develop the roadmap. And at the end of the day, not every product manager is thinking about monetization, but every product manager is definitely thinking about how to get value as quick as possible. And sometimes value as quick as possible to the customer and revenue for the company is not entirely perfectly aligned. And that's your job to make that work. So don't be scared. The third piece is just do the research right. It's not that hard. My product marketing lead who worked on this had never done a pricing project before. And I worked with her on it, and we got there pretty quickly to an answer that gave us a really good outcome. And so just do it. It's not too hard. You don't have to invest a ton. You don't have to spend 5 months doing this analysis, but just do it right. The fourth piece is don't be afraid to ask your customers if they're willing to pay more. A lot of people think that asking your customers if they're willing to pay more is just going to backfire, because then they're going to be worried that you're going to charge them more. But if you can tie it to real value, that's even better. And so when you have this new feature, it's really fantastic to be like, hey, look at this new feature. Do you want to pay more? And if they say no, then you learn that and you don't, and they get used to it over time. And the last piece really is raise your prices. When you read a lot of material by Profitwell or some of the other pricing consultants, what they say is that most customers actually, or most of their customers, most people could actually raise their prices more. So don't just do it wildly, but do the research, figure it out, ask customers what they're willing to pay, but just do it. Just raise your prices. It's usually going to work out. So that's about it. Once again, my name is Zach. I work at RD Station. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to chat further. And now I'm looking forward to chatting.
Welcome back to Product Marketing Off-Piste. We're sure you're enjoying the presentations from our guest speakers so far. We're enjoying playing host, and the good news is we've even more talks coming up. But before we throw even more grade A content your way, we want to take a moment to thank every person who's contributed to making Off-Piste a worthy addition to the product marketing calendar. Sponsors, partners, speakers, and of course every product marketer who is registered and tuned in. Enjoy the talk.
Every year, 60% of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. That's enough time to get from LA to New York. Walking. With Asana, your team gets that time back. Asana makes it easier for teams to get work done, assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Hi, and welcome to Go-to-Market Best Practices in a Cross-Functional World. I'm Yvonne Chow, and I've been in product marketing for 12 years across B2B SaaS, B2C, FinTech, and telecommunications. Here are the companies where I grew and honed my skill sets. I started my career in Malaysia and Singapore before moving to Canada 2 years ago, and I'm now building out the marketing department at one of Canada's fastest growing companies. Certain is a leading people data platform that helps businesses perform fast and accurate background checks, as well as ongoing risk monitoring on employees. And we're always looking out for the best talent, so do check us out on social. Now, in my experience, every company defines the product marketing role differently. It could be due to where the company is in terms of growth and maturity and what its immediate business needs are. In my opinion, PMMs are the business connectors and enablers of growth. Beyond just being responsible for positioning, messaging, and competitive differentiation, PMMs sit right in the middle of all business units, connecting sales, partners, and marketing teams to ensure alignment and work efficiencies, all to generate and close opportunities with our customers. So, as the team that sits at the intersection of multiple teams, PMMs are either part of or responsible for managing the end-to-end go-to-market or GTM of any product or service. Today, I'll provide an opinion on what exactly GTM is, when it starts, and ultimately who starts, owns, and executes the various phases of GTM. I'll also explore if there is an ultimate GTM blueprint. Now, at this point of my presentation, I've already lobbed at least 8 acronyms at you. PMM, GTM, B2B, B2C, and so on. There's going to be quite a few more, but I promise that they're all within context. Now, more often than not, as you transition through different teams and companies, understand how the company functions and how the team is set up and how their GTM processes are like, it can sometimes feel a little like this. So I thought we'd start here instead. Now, you'll find a lot of great resources online about GTM strategies and frameworks. So what I've done is I've taken my personal learnings over the years and what I've read and boiled it down to these 4 pillars. These are what I believe are the four main pillars to a successful GTM when working cross-functionally. We'll start with the first pillar, understanding your market and potential. What do I mean by that? Simply put, it's understanding your market and customer trends and developing good competitive intelligence. These data points will help you understand untapped opportunity. For example, are there new products or features that haven't been built out yet for your main customer base? Now, understanding your market and customer trends and doing this review regularly will help you refine your audience targeting and your addressable market too. Your customer type may change, your buyer persona may change, and you need to stay up to date with these trends. I'll summarize this as identifying where the smallest change can make the biggest difference. Now, if you're able to understand your market and its full potential well, your cross-functional partners will reap its benefits. Your sales colleagues will know which verticals to develop, and your product teams will understand what influences a buyer. Across all teams, everyone benefits from knowing what your competitors are doing, how they position themselves in the market, so that they can come up with a plan to counter it. The next pillar is understanding the buyers and the users, as well as their pain points. In some of my previous roles, PMM owned the buyer persona in collaboration with the marketing and sales teams, and the user persona is owned by the product team and the design team. This makes sense to me because I interview buyers and the sales teams to understand the value they see in the solution that we're offering. And then I bring those insights to our product team. The product team then connects my buyer persona research to their user persona research, giving us a full picture of how the product is perceived and then used and then repurchased. So here are some questions that we would address as a cross-functional team. Product would help address the jobs to be done, what tasks your products are addressing. That bleeds over to pain points that your product is solving for, but at the same time, PMMs would elevate that product message by determining the business issue that is plaguing the buyer at the time. That means that our product messaging and positioning needs to address their purchase motivations. I'll give you an example of how you look at a user persona with these questions. So let's take a social media marketer. A social media marketer has the following tasks. They need to create and schedule content. They need to seek conversations about the brand. They need to track influencers, competitors, keywords, and monitor social performance. Now, in doing these tasks, they have a few pain points, such as demonstrating the value of their efforts. It also sounds like they're doing a lot, so they could be stretched really thin. Now, they're motivated in their day-to-day job by efficiency and quality and effectiveness. So by understanding the user persona well, the product team can begin to iterate and build products that address the user persona well. And the PMM team can begin to craft product positioning and messaging that resonates with the buyer and the user. The next pillar in a successful GTM strategy is getting your product, price, and solution fit. I really like this image here. If there's one key takeaway from this slide, it's that never try to sell a meteor to a dinosaur. It wastes your time and annoys the dinosaur, or makes them extinct. So fit is all about product, price, positioning, and even the marketing channels. The questions to think about as a PMM is, why is your solution compelling to the target audience that you have? Are you speaking their language? Are you addressing their pain points? If you are, great. Now, how do you build awareness? It's one thing to have great product market fit. But if you're not where your audience consumes their information, you're not going to see product adoption or revenue growth. Now, I know that a lot of marketers today, myself included, like to use digital channels because it's where we are at, right? Like you're here now, you're watching me online. But there are pockets of customers where it would make sense to do roadshows or trade events instead of relying solely on digital channels. So we really need to understand where and how they consume their info. Last but not least, measuring and improving. Now, if there's one thing that I learned very early on in my marketing career, it's that numbers matter. Tactics are fairly easy. And what I mean by that is that it's much easier to say that I want to publish an ebook or create an email nurture campaign. It's easier to say that than it is to say, I'm publishing an ebook because I want to drive these goals and objectives. So, in any GTM, giving your cross-functional partners visibility on why you're building a product, why you're applying a particular tactic, and what results you're expecting, in addition to the how you're doing things, whether it's to see a change in customer behavior or to have an expected increase in revenue, will help elevate your role as a PMM. And of course, drive success in go-to-market. To this effect, beyond being specific, sit with your cross-functional partners and have shared, aligned goals and metrics. For example, when I propose an acquisition campaign, I not only share how the landing pages will look like with my sales team or how I'm driving the traffic, I'm also making sure that we're clear on the results that we're trying to achieve. It's also important to follow up every single time after a launch, post-campaign. This helps you find out what you can improve on. So now that I've covered the 4 key pillars, the other question I get a lot from my conversations with people who are discovering the PMM function is, does GTM start only when there's a new product to launch? Well, not really. Let's review our 4 pillars and let's look at how they can be applied throughout your revenue generating cycle. So, when you have a change in your product, in your messaging, in your sales place, that can kick off a GTM motion. It can be a big motion or a small one, but you go through the actions of ensuring that your messaging is on point, that you've reached out to your customers to let them know of the change, and that you've trained your sales teams on the changes. Next, what about your buyer and user personas? Sometimes users' behaviors change. Sometimes your areas of focus in terms of your verticals will change. And when they do, you might have to explore a new product or a new messaging to appeal to these changes. That would kickstart a new go-to-market motion. Same goes for fit. Like, what if you changed your pricing? Or what if you have a new customer type? You might find yourself in a new go-to-market motion where you'd have to understand your market really well again, monitor your competitors, and see if you still have product market fit. As with all of them, your metrics will change according to the strategies you put in place to address the situations. So it's not just a new product that will create a go-to-market strategy. Now, more acronyms. In almost every company I've been at, I've heard this a lot, right? Choruses of, I want to be involved. Me too. You? Them? What's the racy or the rapid, guys? Who's in charge of what? Is it PMM? Is it PM, UX, AEs, RMs, CSMs? It's a lot, but it really speaks to how the success of GTMs can hinge on effective collaboration between teams. For those of you who may be wondering, PMM is, of course, product marketing managers. PM could be product or project managers, depending on the context. UX is user experience. And the four acronyms at the last line are usually sales and customer success. RACI and RAPID are roles and responsibilities matrices or frameworks, which you may also be familiar with. Okay, so taking a deep breath, here's what the cross-functional teams may look like across different go-to-market phases. Now, typically, in an ideal world, you'd start out with your discovery phase before moving into design and alignment, launching, and then monitoring. There are different deliverables and activities that correspond with each phase. Again, in an ideal world. And here, using the RACI model is where the different teams would come in and what their extent of their responsibilities may look like. Now, this is by no means the only blueprint that you'll find or use. Again, adjust it to the business that you're operating in, the teams that you have, and the complexity of your product or service offering. I'm only showing this to demonstrate how GTM services would look like when you, as a PMM, are structuring your launch out. So it's a lot. And I'd like to share my experience in launching a product within a local market, as well as a global launch, to show you how the blueprints can adjust depending on your context. So back when I was in Singapore, I worked at Singtel, which is Asia's largest communications group. During my time there, I worked with an amazing team to launch a greenfield mobile commerce venture for end users. So, what did GTM look like at the start? Well, the initial business strategy was owned by the cross-functional senior leadership team, and we're talking about the directors and above. Then, as we went down into the product funnel, we looked into a lot of market research and, of course, competitive intel. Using the RACI framework, you can see that the responsibles and accountables were the PMMs and the product managers, and the consults and informs were sales, marketing, legal, and finance. Product built, typically owned by product and our developers and engineers, and the rest of the cross-functional teams were either consults or informed. Now this, with product testing, it was everyone in the working level across all the teams. And I remember that they were doing testing until 2 a.m. It's not a typo, I promise. But in this context, it made sense because that's the time when the app usage was at its lowest. So it was easy for us to go in, do a bit of testing, go into regression, push it back into production, and do all the fun stuff without impacting our users too much. So that's at the start when we were building out the product. Now it's time to GA, make the product generally available or launch the product. Now what? So we had a bunch of pricing business cases throughout the entire product lifecycle, from its start to campaigns that we were trying to drive. At this point, I was the PMM and I was responsible for those pricing business cases, and I consulted with finance and sales. I also informed marketing, but as we went out and executed on the campaigns, you'll see how the pricing campaigns become more and more involved for marketing. GA sign-off was from product and product marketing. And then in terms of the marketing channel strategy, the accountable was by marketing. The responsible was PMS because we came up with the pricing campaigns, for example, and then consults were sales and informed was the rest of the business. Everyone monitored the health of the business, but metrics did differ depending on the teams that you were with. So some of the questions that I had include, how do you guys keep track? And on a pure human relationship level, this is an image that I feel resonates with me the most. And it was that across the entire cross-functional teams, we all really banded together, and we were there on the ground with our customers. We were there together doing testing, and it was because we were united with this vision. And our vision was, we wanted to enable financial access to a group of people that typically didn't get that sort of access. And in a way, it was us changing the world that we lived in. So we really held on to that vision and used it as a way to bond and drive the business forward. The second example was Hootsuite Insights powered by Brandwatch. Some of you may know this, but Hootsuite is the world's most widely used social media management platform. And during my time there, I launched a new product called Hootsuite Insights at the end of 2019. Now, at the start, this is how go-to-market looked like. The initial business strategy was very similar to the Singtel example. It was all set by our cross-functional senior leadership. And we all, again, did a bunch of market research and competitive intel across PMMs and the PMs, keeping sales and marketing informed and consulted. Product build, pretty much the same as well. But when it came to product testing, we had a global beta program, of which, interestingly enough, the R's and the A's were PMs, our developers, engineering, and PMM. And that's because in my PMM role, I was interviewing beta users to validate our use cases, our key benefits, and our value propositions. We used the beta program as a way to keep everybody informed on how we would think about our sales motions moving forward, or how we would be doing our positioning. So when it's time to launch, how did that happen? The marketing and channel strategy in terms of the R's and the A's was co-led by PMMs and marketing, in the sense that we have a enterprise marketing team that was responsible for their own channel strategy, and they wanted to use our product as one of the sweeteners in their campaigns. So depending again on the kind of campaign that I was trying to drive, or my enterprise marketing teammates are trying to drive, you would see different levels of being responsible versus accountable. And of course, we kept sales in the loop, and we've consulted with them and kept the PMs involved. Next, we had this thing called the sales play strategy. And this was really interesting because our product was built with a partner. So in this case, you'll see that the R, A, and the C was really across a huge group of teams, where we had partner, sales, product, and PMM. We kept all of our cross-functional leaders informed, of course. Next, we had sales enablement. And this is where you'll see a bit more of a difference between the sort of B2C and B2B world. I find that sales enablement is more of a formalized channel that's used in SaaS B2B. So here we have the responsible being, of course, our sales enablement partners, as well as our partner. And the consults were sales and PMM. We informed the rest of the business. Monitoring, the same thing as the Singtel example. Everyone monitored based on what tactics they were doing, so the metrics were different. So how do we manage this global cross-functional launch? Well, it really is this: clear, open, and honest communication. And I know it can sound a little cheesy, but really, here's how we did it. Clear alignment from the top, of course. And in terms of the open and transparent communication, all the project plans, from the product plans to the marketing plans, they were openly shared across teams. And it was with literally everyone. I did not keep my marketing plans to myself. If anything, I remembered sitting with my product manager as well and hashing out how we would do the go-to-market potentially. We also had a very strong project manager who just kept everybody informed and kept every team accountable. Last but not least, when you're doing a global launch, you have to think about your global partners. And we were working with people in Europe. So we had to make sure that our meetings were time zone friendly. And if we couldn't, we made sure that they were recorded so that people could go back to them and refer. Now, to sum it up, every team has a role to play. So make sure you align your races or your rapids. Have a plan on paper. Keep everyone accountable. Measure and iterate. Be smart. And communicate. Have your email updates, your meetings, announce your numbers. Just follow through with everything. And that way, you'll make sure that growth isn't a strategy that you're trying to drive. Your go-to-market is your strategy, and you'll end up with growth as the result. With that, I hope that you'll end up becoming the company that you want to do business with, or at least die trying. And that brings me to the end of my sharing session with you guys. Of course, I should give credit where it's due with comics by Hugh MacLeod. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks for tuning in to another presentation courtesy of Product Marketing Off-Piste. We hope you've enjoyed the session. The good news, we've even more speakers lined up who will be sharing their product marketing expertise. So brace yourself, it promises to be quite the ride.
Videos, analysis, stats,
In some ways,
charts,
things are kind of the same.
People are dropping off.
In other ways,
The screen's too slow.
well,
Fluffy, seriously?
We still got a couple things just to polish this up.
the good news is we've learned we can do this.
Any questions?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, let's run through the sign-up flow. I really like how clean it is.
Turns out when we're hitting our goals, nobody cares if we're wearing pants. We just need the right tools. So our team stays a team. So no matter what comes next, we know we can work better, do better. This is going to work.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm Allie Good, and I'm with Renaissance, where we are accelerating learning for all worldwide. I work in the K-12 EdTech SaaS space. And the truth is that I've been in education kind of my whole life. So everything I'm going to talk about today around messaging is brewed very much in that tea. So I guess it behooves me that I was thinking of starting by acknowledging the teachers who've come before me. I'm not going to call them all out by name, but just know that I am thankful for your service and your mentorship, and especially my very own team at Renaissance who teach me so much. And I have to give a special shout out by name to one of my team members who helped me a lot by helping pull this slide deck together, Melissa Barkley, whose design skills are far superior to my own. And she's way more clever too. She came up with this much better title, which I use as a subtitle, the decoder ring. I love it because it hints at the nerdiness that I'm gonna get into. So that's a forewarning to you all. With that, I'll just jump right in. I figured there's probably at least 3 ways to start this presentation. 1, humor. What's the difference between a product manager and a product marketer? Well, the product manager can tell you how the product works, but the product marketer can tell you how it works for you. 2, a personal narrative. When I was a wee product marketer, and this is a true story, by the way. When I was a wee product marketer, I had an amazing experience. I got to listen to Patrice Lumumba Jones give this charismatic presentation on brand messaging and positioning, in which he argued that if you really wanted to sell an educator on a product, that you needed to tap into that sort of original reason why that drove them into education in the first place. You had to like turn that heart mission on in order to make your products feel relevant and meaningful. We were all in with him. It was a room full of product marketers. Everybody was kind of on the edge of their seats. I mean, Patrice is one of those speakers who, when he talks, you kind of fall in love with him a little bit. But then he starts talking about how in order to do this well, you might need to back off the feature drop. I leaned over to my colleague and was like, that's all well and good for the brand agent, but we're in product marketing, am I right? I was wrong, 100% wrong. And I'm hoping that this presentation today is going to redeem me from that moment. 3, an unsavory idea. Product folks spend a lot of time talking about customer pain points. And that's their job, right? They've got to figure out where they can go in and make a difference in people's lives. But that does not mean that we have to lean into that. No, I'm going to posit that marketing should not exploit pain. Listen, life is hard. 2020, brutal. People do not need or want to be reminded of their worst days, their poorest selves, their poorest showings. No, they want to be reminded that greatness is possible and that it's okay to dream, and that idealism and those imaginations of where we can go can be reached. That's what we can do. How do we do that? We do what Patrice told us to do, which is focus on that why, and that will allow us to bring the customer's mission into focus. And if our company has positioned itself in the right way, that company's mission and our customer's mission ought to be one and the same. So what does that mean? That means that we have to become a mirror for our customers, for their best selves, not their worst days, not their worst selves, their best days, their best selves. And then that will allow us to see them, their future selves in us. Here's a for example, another personal narrative. I recently bought a stove. I know it's not a SaaS product, but I think that the example will scale, so just bear with me. It has this super cool feature where I just tap the warming drawer with my toe and out it slides. I can imagine that the product team, like they must have really done their due diligence. They must have really observed customers in their kitchens, pulling hot dishes out of the oven and needing to put them in the warming drawer, but warming drawer, I forgot to open it. So now I have to find a place. And if you're in a little tiny kitchen like mine, where do I sit this hot thing? Just back in the oven it goes, open up the warming drawer, pull it back out, bend down again. You see the pain, right? It would be really easy to exploit that. It'd be really simple to say, oh, our product is easier to use than our competitors. Well, at the risk of getting hate mail, I'm going to share another really unpopular opinion. Marketing as easier to use it's just kind of table stakes these days. Like customers just expect that. That's like basic level stuff. Oh no, it's our jobs to kind of lift them up and remind them of what possibly can be. Maybe set the scene of, I don't know, holiday party, feels relevant to me. Holiday lights glistening in the background, champagne glasses clinking in the foreground, children playing quietly off in the corner because did we mention that this is an idealized vision of our future selves? And there, the host, pulling out of the oven a home-cooked, homemade, from scratch, amazing something that smells delicious. The smell emanates across the open floor plan, everyone looking into the kitchen. With grace, the host taps the warming drawer, opens it, slips in the amazing dish, closes it, stands up and smiles, looks out at their guests, picks up their champagne glass, toasts them all. What a wonderful memory has been made and achievement unlocked. Amazing host. These are the kinds of stories that we can paint for our customers. These are the messages that we can use to win them over, to let them know that we see them. We see them in their best possible way. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. She promised me nerd and pseudoscience, and all we've gotten is a bunch of like crunchy feely stuff. So let's move on to the nerd zone. You can see here a lovely little sort of nested taxonomy, maybe a strong word, but hopefully you'll forgive. And let's just sort of quickly go through it. We'll start at the top, which is what we all know, right? The value prop. Product does what for whom? Your basic Mad Libs version. Hopefully you're doing something more elegant, something more difficult, like Dunsford's product positioning work. And then, of course, you have your feature set. You know what those are. Your product team may not let you forget. And what sometimes gets lost, though, are these things in the middle, right? And this is where the customer's story really shows up, because it's the benefits to the customers and it's the value drivers that give them those benefits that are the real key, right? And so I think sometimes I was at least, was taught to think of like features lead into benefits, lead into the value drivers, which ultimately gives way to the value prop. And that's fine. I think that totally works. I think that's certainly a logical way to sort of pressure test your messaging. But another way to pressure test it is to think of it from the top down. And something kind of curious happens, I think, to the features when we do that. So let's start at the top. The product value prop just becomes a simple statement like of what the product does. Like, what is it? What does it do? how does it do that, right? Like, what are the 3 to 5 major ways that it delivers on that promise? And then the why you really want it. Like, what does it give you, right? It's not just an easy tap, open warming drawer. It allows me to be graceful and to experience the true, like, host achievement unlocked pride. And then, of course, there's the features down below. But when you think of it from the top down, what happens is that the features become just the ways that we deliver on those earlier promises. They become sort of the afterthought rather than the place to start. And that's what I like about looking at the messaging sort of in this taxonomy sort of way, is it allows us to think about the value of each of the parts more specifically. Now, what's really interesting, I think, is when we start to pressure test this against product messaging or product marketing that we know. For example, I just chose Spotify. I think it's a company we're probably relatively familiar with. And I grabbed their value prop from, a simple search. Spotify is a digital music service that gives you access to millions of songs. And then from their website, I grabbed their value pillars: download music, no ad interruptions, play any song, unlimited skips. And then you can see beneath that the benefits, right? Listen anywhere. Enjoy uninterrupted music, even on mobile, just hit next, right? It's celebrating the delight that the customer is going to have. What's really curious, I think, is that I couldn't find those detailed features anywhere in the marketing materials for their premium subscription. In order to find them, when I finally did a search, where I found them was in their KB article. They're not using this extensive long feature list to try to sell the premium subscription. Another shout out to my colleague, Melissa Barkley, who took the sales funnel and overlaid it on our messaging taxonomy. Another big reveal, I think, happens here. When we take the idea of the sales funnel, and we lovingly call this like Maslow's hierarchy of customer need, right? What does it do, right? A basic question. The value prop answers it. Does it align with my vision of like who I really am and what I intend to be? The pillars into the benefits starts to answer that. And then benefits into features start to tap into what's in it for me personally. And then feature sets alone start to answer these deeper funnel questions. Like if you've already answered, yes, it aligns with my vision. Yes, I like what's in it for me. Then you're left with the questions like, is it better than what I'm currently using? Am I ready to really try this thing out? That's when the features, as specific, like deep features, become valuable. It's only that deep in the funnel that they seem to really matter to customers. Now, here was my big revelation. I was always kind of frustrated as a product marketer with the insistence from sales on having collateral that really deep dives into all the features. I couldn't figure out why they wanted that. I wanted to provide collateral that was very top of funnel, right? Value props, pillars, and those big stories, right? And painting those pictures. That was the part I liked. I'm a storyteller after all, right? And then once we overlaid this this funnel on top, I was like, I get it. I get why sales is all down here. This is where they spend most of their time. This is most of the conversations they're having. This is where they make their money, right? So it makes sense that this is where what they would need and want. And this is a natural friction that exists in this pendulum swing between product marketing and sales. And I think that it's a healthy one. And once we recognize the value of each of these parts of a message, and we recognize when they become more valuable, then we can deliver on our promise to deliver the relevant message at the right time, using the right channel to the right customer. We've got to understand how that buyer's journey syncs with our messaging. That's the short story here. This is the last slide. And I do want to spend just a minute on it because I think that it's really important. I hope you guys stick it out with me here. If you work in a portfolio company like I do, where you have multiple products, or even if you don't, even if you're in a startup and you're selling one thing, like you've got to be able to draw a direct line from your company's mission to the value prop, to those value drivers of the company, to the product itself. And from the product down through the product messaging, all the way to the features. The features have to evidence our commitment, not only to delivering the promises that the product makes, but to delivering the promises that the company makes. And for example, my company, Renaissance, our mission is to accelerate learning. That's luckily the mission of all the educators that we're serving. It's important to me that my salespeople and my product marketers can explain how a feature release is an example of our commitment all the way up through this to our mission. And if we can do that, and we can take the time to draw those small connections of the features to those idealized versions of the customer selves, to the grand idealized versions of the customer's selves, then we've done our part. That's the role of product marketing. Remind people of what's possible. Remind people that greatness can be unlocked. It just takes all of us. And with that, I will close. My next slide is just my name. One silly joke that I'm tired of telling at this point maybe is that you can remember my name by remembering that I'm almost all good. If that pesky I weren't getting in the way. And maybe you can look me up on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with all of you. I mean, the Product Marketing Alliance is doing an excellent job of bringing us together. I think when we come together, when we work together, and we share together, we can learn together and we can grow together, and we can all become those idealized versions of ourselves together. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Hopefully in 2021, we can be together. I look forward to seeing you in person next year.
Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're back for more specialist insights, welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. Before we begin, we want to say a thank you to our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this awesome event to life. We're sure you'll enjoy it. And if you're on the lookout for more resources, our Slack community is home to a bunch of contributions from thousands and thousands of fellow product marketers. So if you're not already a member, join the debate, but for now, enjoy the presentation.
%60 of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. Asana gives you that time back. Assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company, so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Hi everyone, I'm Girish. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, that's product marketing. Specifically, I'll provide tips on how to scale your product marketing team depending on the phase of your organization. That is, you may be a startup and you're experiencing organic growth and you may be heading towards an IPO. I want to share a few tips that has worked for me over the years, and hopefully you can benefit from it. Unlike other sessions, this session is not about adding more resources to solve the same problem. If you don't have a proper product marketing strategy in place, not if you have the right skills in place, just throwing additional headcount won't solve your problem. You'll fail. That's proven over the years. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. I've spent many years in the combination of product marketing and full stack marketing roles across a range of companies. Some of them have been very successful startups and global brands as well. And along the way, I've taken stops at different companies offering cloud solutions, security, ML, and other related areas. As I said in my opening, this session is not about what is product marketing, nor am I going to talk about what's the ideal team structure, what should the team structure be like. If you have questions, ping me offline, glad to talk to you about it. There's enough information on hiring best practices and training, so I'm not going to spend this session covering those things. My recommendation, if you're getting started in product marketing, Product Marketing Alliance is arguably one of the best resources or repositories where you can find information for everything related to product marketing. It has information for those who are looking to break into product marketing, as well as experienced product marketers who are looking to expand their skill sets. This session is about how to scale product marketing across various phases or stages of a company. It could be from a startup to organic growth to IPO or other. We'll look at this across different lenses today. Before we discuss how to scale, let's visit the topic or revisit the topic. Why is it so difficult to scale? In many companies, I won't say most companies, in many companies, there are unrealistic expectations of what product marketing is. Just because there is a product and a marketing in the job function, people think it's everything related to both functions. And there's uncertainty or lack of clarity on the role. I've seen companies where they expect product marketeers to run all campaigns. It may work in certain companies at certain stage, but in general, there are specialists who are good at that. And who are your stakeholders? It's fairly typical to have everyone on the e-staff or exec team be a stakeholder for all product marketing activities. Or it may be one or two people or a smaller subset. You need to know who your stakeholders are. And the face of an organization, that is whether it's a startup or you filed your S1, that is the initial step towards publicly trading on the stock markets in US, it heavily weighs into your organizational maturity and the expectations in product marketing. Is there a planning and GTM strategy within your company? Often I hear product management doing things and sometimes even sales doing things in isolation of marketing and product marketing. And one of the key challenges to scale, or why it's so difficult, is the skills. And the skills that are needed in a startup may be slightly different when you're IPO and you're a global brand with tens of thousands of people. Some of the core skills are required. However, you need to evolve as a product marketer or as a product marketing team to the changing expectations within your org. Let's now visit one of these one by one. When you think of product marketing responsibilities, there are three common things. People always say, hey, product marketing owns messaging and positioning and launches. Great. And as the company evolves, you may do some more comparative analysis. Perhaps you'll do comparative intelligence as well. How about content? My view is that all product marketers should be able to write. But are they the right people to run a content strategy or content marketing for the company? Maybe, maybe not. Depends again on the phase and stage of the company. About 10 years ago, I had a friend of mine who was running marketing at a company. He said product marketing is dead. It's all about content marketing. Fast forward, let's say that product marketing is stronger than ever before. Pricing. There's a role conflict here. Many companies, they may have a pricing team, or they may have product or product management run point and pricing schemes. However, the success of your pricing is heavily contingent on if you have product marketeers or marketing associated with that. Campaigns. As the company evolves, or if the company is small, product marketeers are asked to help. And there's a natural shift in role of a product marketer. Because the messaging that you worked on in the initial stage of the first, let's say, a first product launch, irrespective of whether you had a category or not, may not necessarily work when you have a campaign. Or if it does, you need to make sure the campaign team is aligned with your messaging. How do you work with the campaign teams? What's about the web copy, or about the email copy? Analyst relations is a common area where product marketers are involved, and involvement may vary depending on the phase of the company. Launch is not the same as enablement. As the company grows, you may have an enablement team. What's the role of product marketing? Are you training the sales people, and then product management trains sales engineers? How about the SDRs, the sales development reps, or business development reps, BDRs? Who trains them? Is the enablement team doing that? Do they have the right messaging for that? So again, the role of product marketing and the responsibility continues to vary. This leads to often confusion within the org. And the reality is that often I see campaigns and enablement hitting the steady state. These are the common asks. I need more campaign. I need to run a campaign to drive pipeline. That's a common ask of product marketers. And then I need compelling content. It's often the complaint I hear is, hey, it's not technical enough, or it's not resonating with the right audience. Right? Again, within each of your companies, you may have different challenges, but then there is the role of product marketing continues to evolve. Know what is expected of your team and within your company. Let's talk about flavors. As you know, there is this general bucket which product marketing is lumped into, and there are really multiple flavors of, right? So the three common things that come to mind are product marketing, solutions marketing, and vertical marketing. Product marketing is what everyone associates with the product, whether it's a service or a software, hardware product, or irrespective of the delivery mechanism. Solutions marketing tends to be more use case or problem centric. Vertical marketing is the one that's often referred to as industry marketing. This is where you're targeting specific verticals or industries such as healthcare, financial services, retail, so on and so forth. Partner marketing is where product marketing is often asked to help. And there are multiple flavors of partner marketing. For example, you may have system integrators, you may have technology partners, you may have resellers, you may have partners who are actually embedding your products within their offers, often referred to as OEM partners. Platform marketing is all rage these days, right? I mean, if you think about Salesforce as a company, they've always executed very well as a platform company. What's the role of product marketing there? Do you need dedicated platform marketeers? And then portfolio marketing has emerged as an umbrella category to describe everything related to product, solutions, vertical, and platform marketing these days. It's depending on the size of the company, this is something that's emerging. That's almost like at the higher framework level than product marketing. Services marketing is again a key area of focus for product marketeers. If you're a classic enterprise software company, think Oracle and companies like that, significant part, anywhere from a quarter to 1/3 of your revenue comes from services, maintenance, and support. And you need product marketing or equivalent of that called services marketing to make sure that the stakeholder needs are met. And then the other flavor is customer marketing. Is it doing more to the installed base, or is it customer case study and references? Again, there is role confusion when it comes to different flavors of marketing, or aka product marketing here. You run into the situation where product marketing and sales are not necessarily aligned. They may have their own strategies, but they're not marching together in concert, or that is, they're lacking synergy. If you're in one of these situations, no matter how many resources you throw at product marketing, you won't be able to solve that. So what you need is a cohesive product marketing here before you think about scaling. That is, product may launch products and sales may be promoting that to the customers or their target base on their own. Marketing may be running some campaigns and web activities. They often appear as disjoint without a cohesive strategy. Stakeholders. I've just listed 9 here. This is fairly common in many companies where there are stakeholders all the way from the exec team to engineering and enablement who are stakeholders. And an emerging area is now customer success. Customer success has been tasked with the customer experience success, as well as the renewal and retention challenge these days. So product marketing is often asked upon to help customer success. You don't need 9 stakeholders. This is again what I've seen in some companies. You may need a smaller subset of stakeholders depending on your company. Nevertheless, knowing who your stakeholders are and making sure they are clear, they clearly understand the role of product marketing helps you scale and hire the right people. Skills profile. This is arguably one of the biggest challenges to scale product marketing. I've categorized the skills profile into 4 broad buckets. I'll walk you through each of them, and then we'll try to do the matchmaking to this different stage of the company. So let's start with product. The profile of a product marketer, whom I'm putting in the product bucket, naturally gravitates towards the product features, the benefits, how it works, and the details around product. And these are the people you need on your team often because they're the subject matter experts. The market-focused product marketers tend to look at the bigger picture, the market sizing, the segmentation, the strategy. It's not that the product person may not do that, but naturally they're gravitate towards the bigger picture. And they're not necessarily the subject matter expert. They may be the market experts. And then marketing. There is another profile of product marketers who are attracted, are like a moth to a flame, towards marketing activities. They like campaign work, they like working with web and activities around that and DG functions. And then there is a fourth profile, is what I call sales focused, or even to some extent customer focused. They love working with sales teams, with enablement actions, creating some copy, creating emails and jumping in, creating PowerPoints. They may not necessarily be your SMEs, but they're always willing to roll up their sleeves and help sales achieve a specific outcome. This is again a broad guideline I've seen over the years. And it's not to say that you need one type over other. Ideally, you need all four in a company to succeed. Sometimes you may be able to pull it off with one or two types. So let's look at that quickly. So it's super critical for us to scale as product marketers to align with the organization phase and the customer life cycle. So what do I mean by a the organization phase? But before we jump into that, let's look at the importance of product marketing strategy. I talked about this Venn diagram earlier where they were barely touching each other. So this is what you may see typically. Product management may have releases every week, or there may be shipping code every day. Or I've seen cases where product ships code every 6 months in a cloud company. That's just not acceptable, right? So then because the customers are not getting the innovation, they're to wait 6 months, which is not aligned with the expectation of the market. So what's ideally needed is a cohesive product marketing strategy that brings together product availability with marketing campaigns as well as enablement in a cohesive way. That's where product marketing strategy is critical. If you don't have this product marketing strategy, adding superstars to your team just won't help. They'll just fail. Because in silos, there may be some good work, but overall as a company, you won't succeed. So let's now look at the organization evolution, starting with the startup. I've had the opportunity to work at several startups. Few of them have had spectacular success. Many of them have failed, but I've learned a lot. So you may start, this is again an idealist situation where you're a startup, you go through some organic growth, your products and solutions are selling very well, and then you're heading towards the next stage as a company. That could be an IPO. Again, roughly about 1% of the companies go through this. I've had the opportunity to be through 2 successful IPOs, including the last one at Sumo recently. And I've been part of companies where we acquired innovative companies, small and large company, as well as a couple of times have gone through acquisitions as well. So again, each of these requires a slightly different profile of a product marketer. So let's look at that. So in a startup, you need people who understand, who know product marketing, but have a natural inclination towards being a generalist. That is, you need people who can do messaging, positioning, write copy, but also you need people who are comfortable working with demand gen teams, who are okay doing perhaps go-to-market motions on a daily or a weekly basis. as a company grows, you need more specialists. Specialists are people who understand not only the product domain very well, but also perhaps they know the market. And as you grow towards an IPO, you need a combination of generalists and specialists, as well as people who have the broader picture. One of the cool things about going through an IPO process is the rigor that is given. If you from a messaging perspective, and your stakeholders are also slightly different now. It's no longer your venture capitalists or customers or the buyers and users, but also the people, the investors who have tons of money, right? So you want to make sure your offers that you're creating are resonating with the investment community. If you have not created a category, perhaps you need to have a category to not only differentiate our offering, but also to clarify the opportunity for the investor in your company. This is primarily the case for the institutional investors, the large hedge funds, the investment shops, and other retirement funds, right? But nevertheless, this is a fascinating experience where you want to look at things from the investor's viewpoint, and also your messaging and positioning will evolve as you go towards an IPO. As a startup, let's say that you have certain leeway, and as you go through the IPO process, there are certain checks and bounds. In fact, there are lots of checks and bounds as to what you can say and what you cannot say. It's an interesting experience, nevertheless. And you need people who are comfortable doing it. It could be your head of PMM or someone else, but nevertheless, you need the people who have a broader experience. And as you're acquiring a company or being acquired, you're looking at not only what your product and market fit is, but also you're looking at from an acquirer's perspective. What's the shared vision? What are they bringing to the equation here? And how is that solving? So you need to have a broader ecosystem-based approach to the market. So how does it map? So this is again generic guidance, not meant to be cookie cutter for every company. So for startups, you need someone who's a generalist, who has the product chops or understands product marketing and a little bit of technology, and is comfortable with the marketing aspect. And as you're going through the growth phase, you tend to get a little bit more specialized. You need people who know the product, who understand the market, and help build the go-to-market motions with sales and sales enablement. And as you're going through the IPO, you're just executing so well, you need people experienced all across. And for the acquisition, it's more about understanding not only your product and your potential suitor or your acquirers, or the tech company that you're acquiring their product landscape, but also what the market opportunity is, and you need to be able to discuss that with the broader community. So this is a generic guidance of what kind of skills are needed in a different stage. You may have one person or 20 people who can do all of these, but historically what I've seen is you need people who have different skills. And again, people may product marketers move on to do other things in their career, and you need to keep a deep bench to help grow the org. Okay, and my last tips regarding scaling product marketing is product marketing has to align with the customer lifecycle. Historically, product marketing and even marketing to some extent has focused on the awareness, consideration, and perhaps a little bit of decision phases of a customer journey. And I'm taken and extended this to the customer lifecycle. Doesn't look like your marketing funnel or sales process, but I'm looking at this from a customer's perspective. Yes, product marketers are required for the awareness, consideration, and decision, but also for the adoption, experience, and renewal. Sales typically focuses on converting, and once a conversion happens, it's the role of the customer success team, which is recently created. When I say recently, it was created about 10, 12 years ago by companies like Gainsight, among others, right? Whose sole task is to make sure the customers adopt your solution, deploy, use it, and that they have a superior customer experience, which leads to early renewals and retention of the customer. More and more, what I'm seeing is that product marketing has a seat at the table in both the experience, renewal, and adoption phases. That is, product marketing is not only about launching a product, enabling the team, and working with analysts, but it's also about making sure customers understand what's in the product. This could be install-based marketing, customer marketing-like activities, about helping customers get there in partnership with teams such as customer success. And when it comes to renewal, you need to make sure that you're not losing more customers than landing. New logo lands are important for a company, but at the same time, you need to make sure your customers have superior experience, they're getting the value, and then they renew ahead of their renewal timeline. So in other words, the role of product marketing is all across the customer life cycle. Just saying that I can only focus on top of the funnel message or middle of the funnel message or bottom of the funnel doesn't work. As a company grows through different phases, you need product marketing. You need product marketeers to play a key role across all these different phases of the customer life cycle. In summary, I have 5 takeaways or tips. Plan your product marketing strategy and execute it. It's critical that product marketing knows the customer life cycle. It doesn't matter, your customer life cycle may look slightly different. Know the marketing funnel or the customer journey, and what's the sales process. Sales may have a different playbook. That's fine. Make sure you understand what that is, and you make sure there is right content and there is right tools to help sales succeed in the sales process. As we discussed, your stakeholders must understand what product marketing is all about before you start hiring and scaling. The critical things like I've been emphasizing, align with the organization phase and journey. You can't have super specialists in the wrong phase of a journey. So you need people, likely need a generalist and specialist. You need a deep bench, in other words, right? Depending on where your company is, what phase it is at. It's actually not often, it's extremely hard to hire good product marketeers. So my recommendation is, if you can, develop your skills inside. You can recruit people from inside, and that's what I've had significant successes recruiting inside the org. They could come from customer success, sales engineering, product, and other parts of the org. So that, in summary, are the 5 key takeaways to scale. If you need to get hold of me, that's my contact information. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. Feel free to ping me. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to continuing our conversation. Cheers.
Welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. We've yet another exciting presentation coming up, but before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to thank every one of our sponsors and partners, because without them, we wouldn't be able to bring this event to you. Don't forget, each speaker is going to be answering your questions, offering tailored support after their presentation. So stick around, leave your question, and get advice from a true expert in the field, tailored to you. It's that simple. Enjoy the presentation.
Every year, 60% of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. That's enough time to get from LA to New York. Walking. With Asana, your team gets that time back. Asana makes it easier for teams to get work done, assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Hello, and welcome to Crafting Sales Narratives That Sell. My name is Rebecca Engelberg, and I'm excited to be here to share some of my personal experiences with you today. And I hope that you find value in this talk and that you can take away some tactics, some lessons, and apply them to your organization. A little bit about me. I was the first product marketing manager at Flybits, a fintech company based out of Toronto. And I joined at about employee number 50. Since then, Flybits has over doubled in size. So I had the unique opportunity to build a new function at a critical time when a startup is becoming a scale-up. A startup is a company in the early stages of determining product market fit, experimenting with customer segmentation, and working toward a positive contribution margin. Whereas a scale-up is a company that has already validated its product within the marketplace and has proven that the unit economics are sustainable. So being a part of an organization that is going through this transition is really exciting because now you have to start creating new processes for scale and growth. You might call that growing pains. I was fortunate that I could be a part of it, and what this has to do with creating sales narratives that sell is quite interesting. So in a tech startup, when you're validating your product, it's very common to be heavily focused on features, especially when it's an innovative product that didn't exist before. And this was the situation that my organization was facing. As is typical with many tech startups, your organization is often composed of engineers, and a sales and marketing function typically come later. So as a result, your sales narrative is all about product features. If you're selling a commodity like soap, that's fine. It's pretty well understood what the features of soap will do for you. But when you're selling a complex B2B technology, you're going to face a lot of difficulty with a feature selling approach. To give you an analogy, I'm going to compare this approach to selling knives. Now, when your organization is scaling up and growing its market, this is where you transition from feature selling to solution selling. From selling knives to instead selling the ability to enjoy a finely cut salad. So what's the challenge with feature selling? It's twofold. Firstly, in a B2B sale, it puts the burden on the prospect to figure out what to do with your innovative features. Maybe the blade is made out of some new material. Maybe the handle has an extra durable grip. But why should the prospect care? What does it mean for them? That's where it often falls apart, because you're not helping the prospect understand how those innovative features will help them achieve their quarterly KPIs or their balanced scorecard. Second, it's more work for your sales team. When you're selling an innovation, requiring your prospect to remember what those innovative features are and have to explain it to their colleagues, that's going to be risky. And oftentimes your sales team will end up creating bespoke talk tracks for all of their prospects, explaining the value, how they think that prospect will want to hear it. And that's really not conducive to a repeatable process. But when you develop a solutions approach, now you're speaking your prospect's language, and you make it easy for them to envision how this innovation will help them to achieve their goals. It also ensures your organization is communicating the same value across the market, reducing the work and making it truly a repeatable process. So that was our goal. Create a pitch that's compelling and repeatable, because the feature selling approach wasn't working. Prospects were saying it's too difficult to explain, and there were too many versions of the same pitch, creating redundant work. But you cannot reinvent a pitch in a vacuum. Your organization has to buy in to ensure that your new pitch is actually being used in the market. Remember, sales is used to selling in their own way. So as a product marketer, who are you to tell them how they should be selling? They're on the front lines speaking to potential customers. So you have to ask yourself, how do you develop a pitch that your organization can actually get behind? And we approach this in 2 steps. First, we leveraged a best-in-class storytelling framework that had a proven track record of success with top technology companies. Second, we invited our sales organization to co-create the story with us so that their input was heard. And we're going to take a deeper look at both of these steps, the framework and the co-creation and the workshop itself. So starting with this framework, this best-in-class framework, we researched online how other successful tech companies built their pitches. And we found a common framework across all of them, leveraged by Salesforce, Tesla, and many other successful tech companies. So here's the framework. You can break it down into four steps or 4 categories. First, why now? What is the undeniable shift in the world resulting in urgency for prospects? Why should your prospects change? Where's the urgency? Second, name the enemy. What is the one thing that's getting in the way of your prospects' happiness, of your prospects being efficient and making money and rising to their full potential? Third, the promised land. What is that happily ever after that your product will help your prospect to achieve? And fourth, how to get there. Name the one thing your product can offer to help slay that enemy and reach the promised land. So let's take a real example so that you can see this framework applied to a company that you're familiar with. Tesla, for example. Why now? Well, with regards to Tesla, it's the rising CO2 emissions that are creating huge damage to the atmosphere and creating irreversible damage to the earth as a whole. So that's a pretty compelling reason to change. Name the enemy. That's fossil fuels or from traditional combustion vehicles. the promised land, an emissions-free world where nature and our health isn't put at risk. And how to get there? That's electric cars. So if you noticed, only at the end of the framework do you even introduce the product. Whereas for the first 3 quarters, you're creating an urgency, a pain, and the vision of a better future. By doing that, you will appeal to the emotions of your prospect and really making the whole storyline about them and their goals rather than starting with you and why your product is so great. And this is a really common fallacy that most organizations, most sales and marketing organizations, that they fall into, as well as many tech startups. So rather than start with the product, what you need to start with is the customer. So we shared this framework with key stakeholders like our sales organization, and we ran a workshop where everyone provided their input into each of the 4 categories. And this step is really crucial to the process. It's crucial to involve your sales organization because they have critical market knowledge and you need to leverage that. And by including them in the process, they will feel that they were part of creating the new pitch, the new idea. And if they invested the time to help you create it, they will be much more likely to buy in once it's ready and actually use it in the market. So what were the results of this process with our organization? So we created a pitch that most people liked, which was, around 150 people. But at the end of the day, there were still skeptics. It's impossible to create consensus amongst so many people. But directionally, we knew it was a big improvement from how we were doing it before. The only way to truly know if it works and if it's going to resonate is to test it in the market. And that's exactly what we did. And what we found were that prospects were much more easily able to grasp how this innovative product, these innovative features, would help them to achieve their KPIs and would fit into their business. As well, prospects asked way less about competitors. So at the end of the day, we were very happy with the results. So I want to leave you with 3 key takeaways. And if you remember nothing else from this talk, remember this when creating your sales narratives. First, take the burden off of prospects. It's not their job to figure out what your innovation will do for them and to create the business case on your behalf. Don't overwhelm them with an innovative feature set. Tell them how your product provides a solution that fits into their business. Second, use a best-in-breed storytelling framework and invite your organization to co-create it with you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. So copy an approach that's worked in the past, but don't create it in a silo. You absolutely need to leverage your sales organization to get their insights and their buy-in to the process. Third, don't wait until you've achieved consensus before launching. The only way to gauge effectiveness is through testing it in the market. And it will always be an iterative process, no matter what stage you are in your organization, from startup to scale up to being, an organization with thousands of people. As markets and prospects change, so will your narrative. That's creating sales narratives that sell. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope it provided you with value. Take care.